everyone. Welcome to this episode of Talk of the Town. I'm James Milan. And today I am joined by Erica Schwarz. Erica is the Executive Director of the Housing Corp of Arlington, and we are here to talk about affordable housing in town, but also to find out about Erica's particular journey. Those of you who have seen Talk of the Town interviews before know that we do like to mix a little bit of the personal in with the professional as well, with the folks that we're talking to here. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
You were mentioning this is already a multiple meeting day for you, so we appreciate you being able to squeeze this in as well. I'm sure that's not unusual, but thanks for having the energy for this too. So I do want to start, as I said, we're going to talk a lot about the work that you do here, but tell us a little bit just about, you and I were talking a little bit before the cameras started rolling about your youth, and I just would love you to share a little bit about how you grew up and how early you kind of identified an impulse to do this kind of work.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a suburb in a, comfortable household, but a very thrifty household. My grandparents were refugees from Nazi Germany, so I had, I think from a very, very young age, an understanding that life is not always easy or fair or safe. And I don't know if it was that or something else innate in me or something in my environment that I think from a very young age instilled in me the feeling that I was very worried about things sort of being fair and making sure that everybody had, what they needed. Mm-hmm. And I think at some point I went to a summer camp that was a Jewish socialist summer camp. Probably had a huge influence on me, on my feeling of self-confidence and my feeling that I was someone who mattered, that my opinions mattered, that I could act on things, which is not something I necessarily felt before that experience. And I think at some point I thought, boy, I want to do something with my life that's like, I want to be an activist when I grow up, or I want to, help people, but I didn't know exactly what that meant as a kid as far as a career. But I think from a young age, that idea was kind of hanging around in me.
It seems like the secret sauce in what you're saying in some way is this combination of you having this idea growing up, of fairness and equity and, that people deserve, everybody deserves X or Y, right? And you want to be able to help. So there was that, but then there was also what you said about the camp, which is this kind of empowerment that you felt also. Do you, as you look back on that time, and as you, if you're speaking to teenagers now or something like that, or working with them, is that kind of, do I have that right? Is that really like the crux of things?
I think it is, and I think not just with teenagers, but certainly with adults, because most of our work at the Housing Corporation of Arlington is with adults, although many of them have kids, and those kids sometimes participate in activities. Mm-hmm. But many people become adults and do not feel that they have control over their lives, the ability to impact what happens to them, and particularly in this economy where when you're struggling financially and it just, these burdens are raining down on you and you can't afford your housing, you can feel very much that you don't have that control. And I think having both the feeling of the control and then discovering that there's times when you can act and have an impact is really powerful, which is why today at HCA, part of our work is to help people develop their own leadership skills, become leaders within our organization and the community so that they can have an impact and try to change things that they want to change. And for me, both personally, that's huge, but also because I know that everybody has the capacity to do that. Everyone has an opinion and sees something that they want to be better or different. And so we try to help people do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you actually, moved my question from the place of teenagerhood that I was talking about right through to the folks that you deal with the most, because this idea of empowerment obviously is vital to us, to all of ours mental health in a sense.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what age you are, the circumstances can grind you down in a way that you really need somebody or bodies to be able to reinforce that sense that, you can do things and you can have agency in your life and in the world and stuff like that. That's Very, very big. So you were, just to take you back again though, to that time when you were a teenager and you'd recognize this in yourself, but you didn't know how that would manifest. Take us from there to, not here necessarily, but I know that you've been working in the area of affordable, in the field of affordable housing for a really long time. So how did that come about?
Well, as a kid, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And then as I got older and I went to college, and for some reason, becoming a teacher felt less connected to me. I spent some time out of the country. I sort of developed a bigger worldview. Although now I imagine, maybe when I retire someday, I'll be a teacher. I think teachers are so important. But at some point in college, I started to focus more on just political issues. And I ended up getting an undergraduate degree in international politics because that at the time seemed the most interesting, but really I think I was on a path then towards sort of seeing the larger world and wanting to have an impact on it. And once I graduated, I worked for a couple of years at a food bank in New Jersey, and when I went to look at grad schools, by that time I had thought, I think I want to focus on this country, maybe not internationally, and I started looking for public policy degrees, which is how I landed in the greater Boston area. I went to Tufts Urban and Environmental Policy program, which had a social justice sort of focus. And as soon as I thought that, I thought, it's a policy program focused on social justice, and you didn't have to take calculus. I think that was, some of those programs you had to take calculus, I think that's what it was. And I thought, okay, great.
Calculus or chemistry, those were my two things that, just gotta stay away.
Yeah, so, and I think it was while I was in grad school that I really gained a deeper understanding and you don't have to go to grad school to gain this understanding, but that's where I started to understand what different career paths that might really be meaningful for me and where I thought I could have an impact. And I learned more about community organizing, and I realized that's really what I want to do, which is the first thing I did when I left and I got my first job. It was as a community organizer working on housing issues.
Okay. So was it the fact that it was working on housing issues that actually got you, open the next doors? It
is. I knew I wanted to be an organizer and focus on social change issues. And I had not thought in any deep way about housing. And then I fell into this organization and I realized, oh my God, housing is such a fundamental, I couldn't understand why I hadn't seen it before, that housing is so foundational and so important. And this was in 2001, and I thought, my God, it's such a crisis out there. Of course, it's gotten so much worse since then. It's hard to believe. We couldn't have fathomed back then how much worse it would have gotten to today.
I'm just going to interrupt and say, because I'm a certain age, et cetera, I know exactly what you're talking about, that I thought in the early 2000s about a number of things. Oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this? And we've got to make this better. And now I look back on it and I'm just thinking, whoa, man, we were living in the flush times at that time.
It seemed like, wouldn't we wish for the crisis of then? But it was really bad. It's just that much worse now. So, I fell into it and immediately just became very connected and thought, this is too important. And it became clear to me very early on in that job that this was the kind of work I wanted to keep doing, both the organizing work and the housing issue. So I've kind of stayed with that pretty much my whole career.
Okay. Well, we'll zoom forward so that we can talk about HCA and the work that you do now. But let's start with how long have you been there? How long have you been the executive director?
It's been it's been about 3 years.
Okay.
So yeah, not too long, but just long enough that we've been able to really do some good stuff since I got there. Yeah.
Yeah. So just give people a primer on HCA.
Who we are. So. Well, HCA has been around since 1986. Next year, we're going to have our 40th anniversary, which is very exciting. But we didn't start developing housing until 2001, because that's a difficult thing to do. And since that time, we've grown. I'm certainly building on the work of the directors and all the board members and people who came before me. And today, we own 151 units of affordable housing. We're in a bit of a transition, so I'm not sure which number to use, but we'll use 151 units of affordable housing. So those are all housing units that we created. Either we acquired and did some rehab, or we built them from new construction. And then we operate those properties with the help of a third-party property management firm. So we have the affordable housing that we own and operate. And then we have our social services. So anyone who lives in our own units or any member of the public who needs help can come and get help because they're struggling to pay their rent, or they need a new, more affordable apartment, or any number of issues that is threatening their ability to be stable in their home or stable in a home. And we can help them both with direct services and accessing benefits like Social Security or affordable health care, or even rental assistance to help pay some of their rent if they're struggling, but also referrals to any number of other Arlington organizations or beyond for specific needs they have. And then we have our civic engagement, which is our work both also with our tenants and people who are not our tenants. We have a tenant council to help our tenants have a voice in how the properties are managed, how their own homes are managed, but also to help them become involved more in HCA and bring more leadership to the organization and beyond. So as we're speaking today, the town is working on updating its comprehensive plan, and we're going to be working to engage our folks in that, because otherwise they might not even know the process is going on, despite the town's genuine efforts to want to involve people. It takes a lot of work to involve people, particularly when they're not used to knowing that there's a role for them to have a voice. So those are the three areas. We have this affordable housing area, the social services, and the civic engagement to help people really help to influence what happens in their community.
You know, I've already learned a bunch, and I, you know, I'm in the privileged position of sitting at this chair and talking to a lot of people who make a lot of things happen in Arlington. And I did not know 2 out of the 3, you know, areas that you were just describing, that you guys, you know, and again, I just want to reiterate what you just said, because people should know that you are open and available, sounds like to me,
Yes.
to all in Arlington, not just the folks who happen to live in the units that you guys own and manage, and able to kind of provide assistance across a broad range of
Yes.
needs for people, that's fantastic.
Yes, and we recently, I'll give a shout out again to Tufts Urban and Environmental Policy Program. We recently had a team of Tufts graduate students do an analysis of our homelessness prevention program. So it's one of the programs in our social services bucket to help people who have an emergency and they're behind on their rent, or they need to move to a new affordable apartment. And they just did this incredible analysis for us to help us understand, how's the program doing? Do we need to do better? Are there recommendations that we should be thinking about? And they found that that program is fantastic. It has these incredible impacts. They had these graphs that shows people's stress went down and didn't go back up. Incredible. And the top recommendation they had for us is that we needed to get the word out more, that not enough people in Arlington know about HCA and know about this program. So yes,
Here we are.
Here we are. It's an incredibly valuable program that really helps people who are just in a bind and oftentimes have lost that hope and don't feel that control. And sometimes just a little boost of cash to help them deal with that current crisis is really transformative in helping them get past a really, really tough time. But we need to let more people know about it, because we are here. We are here for everybody, exactly. Whether you're our tenant or not, we are here to help.
Yeah, and again, that's what ACMi is here for, quite frankly, is to amplify as best we can, or help you do so, those messages that you want to get out to the public about what it is that you can do for individuals and, you know, for residents here in Arlington. And this is a great start. I understand that, you know, you guys have much work to do, just again to get the word out as broadly as you want to. And we're always suffering from that too. And, you know, I often have town officials here who are doing exactly what you just described, you know, talking about the comprehensive plan and providing specific information about how people can be involved and all that stuff. And yet, right, we're up against an awful lot of, you know, just difficulty in getting, you know, to everybody's ears. So we'll do the best. We'll continue to do the best we can. Talking about the, you know, the first piece of the 3 that you had mentioned, the actual provision of housing. you were saying that, first of all, I noted that the Housing Corporation of Arlington came into being in '86, you said, but the first units were bought in 2001. That gives a sense of just what kind of timeline or how ambitious what it is that you are doing is.
Yeah.
Is that always the model where you're basically finding places either to renovate or to build, and then you own those and offer them at affordable housing rates to appropriate applicants?
Yeah, that is exactly the model. It's very different now than it was in 2001 financially. Land is more expensive, construction is more expensive. There's just a lot more pressures on those deals to make them work, and we have higher standards. We all have higher standards today as far as environmental efficiency, and that can be more complex to design. It's all good stuff. Well, that's good stuff. The other stuff's just more expensive because we've allowed our housing market to get even more out of control. But yes, that is the model. And 1986 to 2001 was also that the organization was new.
Sure.
It had to figure out exactly, could it do this? It's always hardest to get the first one going. So it doesn't typically take that long today to get our projects completed, but it can take a very long time. But that is the model. We are always looking for new land to develop, perhaps anew with new construction, or existing buildings, which are faster and cheaper per unit because the building's already built. You might just need to do some renovation and put an affordable restriction on it, and then you've created more affordable housing. So we're always looking for both of those opportunities.
So HCA right today is involved in these three different areas, and obviously in terms of providing housing, there may be some in which you are you're investigating potential leads. Then there's others where you're in mid-construction, and then so there's a whole bunch of kind of places where along the spectrum of we've got an idea, and now we're able to offer this to somebody. There's all kinds of, so you're all over that, and then you have again these two other areas, the civic engagement and the provision of services that you were talking about. There's a lot of challenges there. Just explain to us a little bit how does that happen?
We have a relatively small staff that works really hard. I hope not too hard. We all, life-work balance is very important, and I try to prioritize that for myself and everyone. So I was recently able to hire a new real estate project manager at HCA. So the good news is that I am the lead person for our real estate projects, all the different phases you talked about, which was very true what you described there. And then we have a second person, which is fantastic. His name is Andrew, who now is the second person just working on that real estate because we have a lot going on. And then the social services and the civic engagement, there's two staff. Renee Duran is our social service manager, and Jackson Hamilton's our civic engagement coordinator, and those two sometimes coordinate and work together. And now I have to mention the whole staff. And then we have our office manager, Ellen Roscoe-Bergman, who is sort of like the connective tissue between everything, and our director of finance and asset management, Taka Mashoko. So everyone, in a way, is a little bit their own department, but we all have to sort of work together a little bit and coordinate. And we're working to raise money so we can hire more people, because today I could hire 2 more people and have plenty of work for them to do. So
this sounds it sounds like I don't want to diminish what you're saying in the least when I say it sounds like a very typical nonprofit situation, by which I mean there's a need, you're trying to address the need or multiple needs, you're doing the best you can to say yes to as many of the requests and again respond to as many of the needs as you can with limited staff and resources. And so that whole, I just am so struck by the fact that you as an executive director here on record saying you do believe and you try and put into practice this work-life balance. It's so ironic to me that the world of nonprofits, and ACMi is another one, you find this kind of crazy paradox of leaders like yourself who genuinely want that for the people who work with and for them.
Yeah.
While at the same time, there's too much work to be done for anybody to, assert that balance all the time, right? It's like this is a reality of your working life, right?
Right. But you want to keep your staff happy, and so I think that's a big part of it. Is like we are all human, and I think one of HCA's values is recognizing the humanity in everyone, including our own staff, and so we have to make sure that everyone's okay. We can't make sure everyone's okay, but to the extent that we can as an organization make sure everyone's okay, then that's our responsibility to do that, I think. And we have a really wonderful board also that I think the board and I share those values, and I think we're able to implement that. And I think it's fair to say that my staff feels that too, that that's how we try to carry out our work for ourselves. We treat ourselves with respect. We treat our tenants with respect. It's, I think, part of the culture of the organization.
What do you personally, find what feeds you the most, and what is like the thing that you're most concerned about in the environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think what feeds me is knowing that we're building something that will be sustained, hopefully. And by that, I mean that we're building tenant leaders who will and have their own sort of inner capacity to continue being leaders, hopefully with HCA, but just in their lives, in their communities, advancing things they care about. That we're building housing that will be here for generations, and be around well after I've left this job to provide housing for someone. Knowing that, and there are days when I don't have the right work-life balance, and I'm working on that, but that I can feel like, well, I've invested this time and it's actually going to matter, not just today, but over time in the future.
Yeah, that's a rare thing,
So,
for most of us, right? Just to know that the work that we're putting in now, and the excessive work sometimes that we're putting in now, is actually going to play out for a long time and matter for people, and also over time, which is great.
And the other small thing is that, not every community like Arlington, a wealthier community, a whiter community, a more suburban community, has the kind of culture Arlington has the kind of organization that HCA is, whether they're working on housing or something else, sort of an organization that engages people in this way. And so I'd like to think, there's like a movement of people trying to work on housing, trying to help people who don't have, big bucks have a voice. And I'd like to think in our little way we're contributing. Like we all have an obligation to do something. And here in Arlington, we're doing what we can in Arlington, which is all we can do. We're not the world. And so that motivates me too, that this is important work to do here, and we're doing our part, and a lot of other people are doing their part.
And I wonder if that segues at all into the other part of the question I was asking about.
What do I worry about?
Yeah.
Sometimes I worry, to get into the weeds a little bit, the financial structures of affordable housing today, in part because we've let the market make things so expensive. The financial structures mean that we can't create units that are as deeply affordable as they need to be. Like our affordable units are not affordable enough. And I wonder, are we investing all this energy and they're not affordable enough? But we make our units as deeply affordable as we can with the financial resources we have. So I feel good about that. But I worry about that where's that going? Is anyone at the state or federal level working on that? Which I know they are. That's lately.
Are you hopeful about progress that can be made there, or are you resigned? Are you somewhere in the middle?
I mean, at the federal level, I don't know where I am right now. I think there's so much big picture that has to change about our economy for housing and other things to function better and differently for everybody, and not just people who can afford the situation right now. At the state level, there's a lot of sophisticated minds and not endless resources at all, but there are players who they want to make these projects work, and they're also in it because they want to make effective affordable housing. So we're part of a statewide association, the Mass Association of CDCs, that advocates for issues that impact organizations like ours. So I am hopeful, but I do worry that the housing that was being built, in 2001 was serving in some ways a slightly different population because actually need to earn a little more money now to afford the same unit in a way from 2001. So we need to figure that out. So I do worry about that. But in the meanwhile, we are able to get resources and make some of our units more deeply affordable, so we can try to serve more people who really, really, really need it.
Okay, so, second to last thing to talk about, and that is you had mentioned federal, who knows what's going to, what the future holds. States, there's some reason to, be hopeful or have some expectation, perhaps. How about working in Arlington itself?
So, and yes, we were talking about this before we started taping, that working in Arlington is a joy and a pleasure for me. From my experience working or living in other places, I've never experienced a community that, both from the town hall and from the community at large, is as supportive of this work as it is in Arlington. Wow. And I think that is unique and special and important, and I value it so much. This is very hard work. But it's not made harder, it's actually made easier by the thoughtfulness that comes both from town hall and from the community at large. And it makes a huge difference in the amount of housing we're able to build, in the quality of that housing, the design, the financials. It makes a difference. And in our small staff's ability to put the most of our energy and our financial resources to the things that we all care about, as opposed to trying to navigate, people who are standing in the way of making sure that everybody has an affordable place to live.
Yeah,
so
there's enough
great.
static out there in a macro sense, at least it's good to, well, again, you really know what you're talking about, and so it's very heartening to hear this about our town. You have good basis for comparison, but also, again, you really have tapped into the very things that you're citing about our community. So I'm very appreciative of that. All right, last thing I want to ask you about, and that is, let's talk about the Walk for Affordable Housing that's coming up.
So Housing Corporation of Arlington is hosting our annual Walk for Affordable Housing on Sunday, May 18th. It will be from 12 o'clock to 2 p.m. at the Jason Russell House. It's a really fun event. There's live music, there's food, there's sort of games if you want to bring your kids. It's sort of a fun time to gather and meet. There's opportunities to advocate on affordable housing issues. And then we take it's a half-mile out, half-mile back walk with this band, this raucous, fun walk down Mass Ave to Arlington Center and back. And it's just a great, great day. And everyone is welcome. You don't have to register ahead. 12 to 2 on Sunday, May 18th, starting at the Jason Russell House, right at the corner with Mass Ave.
Wonderful. And I'll just throw in that I, have a few walks for affordable housing in my own background, and especially when our children were small. Also, it was a great time. It was really fun.
Time.
And the weather has been consistent. Mid-May weather has been consistently pretty good. So I shouldn't have said that.
Last year it was actually cold and rainy and gross and miserable, and I thought, no one's gonna come because it's such a miserable day. We had more people than the year before, and it was a fantastic day, even though it was chilly. So rain or shine, we do the walk, and people can go to our website for more information. It's housingcorparlington.org/walk. But if you Google Housing Corporation of Arlington, you'll find our website very easily.
And we'll make sure we get it on the screen for people to see as well. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
It was. I have been speaking with Erica Schwarz. She is the executive director of the Housing Corporation of Arlington. And it has been my pleasure to do so. We really appreciate Erica taking the time to come in and share all of this with us. We also appreciate your time being here. So thank you for joining us. I'm James Milan, and we will see you next time.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.